So I wanted to tell a couple of stories which could be considered proof that we are living in a simulated universe. Some people call these glitches. So normally when you have something really crazy happen, certainly in your younger days, you would just put it down to some sort of coincidence. But when you think back at what the odds could be of some of these things happening, is it really a coincidence, or is it something that you have created just through thought alone? You've actually created the situation. So the first story I want to tell is about my wife. I met my wife originally in Indonesia. She now lives here in the UK. This is over 20 years ago now. Now, my wife's a Buddhist, and the one good thing about her religion and the temple that she stayed at is, well, not stayed at, but prayed at and visited, is they've got temples all over the world. So what they do, obviously, you imagine you're moving to a new country where you basically don't know anybody. My wife didn't know a single person over here. So what they do is they put you in contact with members from the temple in whichever country that you're visiting, right? So, cut a long story short, we were living in London, North London, and we'd been there about a couple of, well, she'd come over for about a couple of weeks, having moved in with me, and she thought, I'm going to contact the person that was the main contact that they said for my wife to speak to. So again, so you've got a friend and someone to talk to when you first come over here. So anyway, she gets the phone number, which she'd written down on a piece of paper, and we called the number, and my wife was talking to her for a few minutes, and where she was from, and what the temple was like back home, and all this kind of stuff. And the other lady was telling her about how often they meet and all these kind of things. And then the person who's called Christine, this is the contact. Christine said to my wife, "Oh, by the way, where do you live?" And my wife started explaining it, and she said, "Oh, I'm in North London." And she said, "Oh, whereabouts?" And she said, "Kilburn." And she said, "Oh, whereabouts?" And she said the name of the street and the house number. And then Christine said, "Open your window," because our curtains were closed at the time. She said, "Open your curtains." And my wife opened the curtains, and there was this woman in the window opposite, on the third floor. We were on the third floor as well, waving through the window. And it was the person that my wife was talking to on the phone. I mean, how crazy is that? Now, I'm trying to think how many people there are in London. I think it's probably about 8 to 10 million people. But, I mean, it's a big city. You imagine, what are the chances that not only was she in the same part of London, then the same street, but she was completely the opposite side of the street, to the point where, we opened the curtain and she was literally opposite. We could hear her waving to us opposite the street. I mean, and of course, what age would I have been? At the time, I think I was 29 when I got married. And my wife said, "There you go, see, it's true, her religion and her God and all this kind of stuff." And I said, "It's just a coincidence." I remember saying, "It's just a coincidence." But now when I look back at that, it's just mind-blowing. Now, another story, maybe not quite as amazing as that, and this is something that's probably happened to you as well. I was walking into work, where I currently work now, actually, and it had been probably, easily 10 years since I'd left the previous place, which was another law firm. I worked for a law firm in IT, and I remember when I left the last firm, I've been there quite a long time, and obviously the heads of the firm are called partners, so they're part ownership of the firm. And most of them, they're nice enough people, but maybe a bit standoffish. You wouldn't sort of necessarily go and converse with them on a regular basis. But there was one guy who, I think his name was Nick, very nice guy, very down to earth, and I made a point of going and sort of speaking to him on my last day when I left, and we had a good chat and everything. So anyway, that was 10 years gone. And then I was walking into work, and I was walking through this tunnel It's a road tunnel. And for no reason whatsoever, he just suddenly popped into my head. And I've got no idea why. And I just had a sort of a fleeting thought, I wonder what he's doing these days, or, whether he's retired already, or what have you. And then it would have taken me from that point less than a minute, I would say, a minute to 2 minutes to get to the end of the tunnel. And I walked around the corner and I just couldn't believe it. I saw him crossing the road, literally almost opposite me. He's crossing the road. And I stood there and waited for him to cross the road. And I said, "Hey, Nick," like that. And I know he probably couldn't remember my name. And again, this happened to me in another story that I've told in another video. I didn't say to him, "I was just thinking about you," because he might think, "Why was I thinking about him?" It's a bit random. But I said to him, "Oh, what are you up to? You still working?" And essentially, he was visiting a client at an office that was about 10 minutes from where I'm currently working. So, we had a quick chat, and I said, "Well, good to see you," and off he went. And then just for the rest of the day, I just thought, again, this is amazing. Is that because I picked up his signals, his vibration, that there's things in the air that I think they've proven. Well, there is, of course. I mean, radio signals go through the air, but we can't see them, right? So are we all actually connected via some invisible force, like a kind of a soup, if you like? I've heard it described. And that's why I thought of him. And then it wasn't a massive coincidence, I suppose, that I bumped into him. Or if we're living in a simulation, then is it feasible that by me thinking about him randomly created him like a character, like a non-player character, and therefore I bumped into him? So let me know your thoughts. What do you think? And has this happened to you as well? If it's happened to you, have you got any stories like this, or when you've thought of something and then they've mentioned it on the radio or on the TV, or a song that you suddenly thought of and it came on the radio, the next minute? I'd love to hear your stories. Give me a like if you enjoyed this video, if you got anything from it, and subscribe if you haven't already. And see you guys soon. Take care.